Making headlines this hour. President Dr. Mohamed Muiz announces at a press conference at the President's office that Operation Kurangi is designed primarily to safeguard the rights of migrant workers rather than to penalize them. President Dr. Mohamed Muiz announces the government has successfully repaid $50 million of the $150 million loan originally obtained from India by the previous administration. And the Maldives welcomes distinguished international delegates as the island nation prepares to host one of Asia's most significant gatherings of broadcasting professionals.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to PSM News in English with me, Abdullah Ahil. And now the news in detail. President Dr. Mohamed Muiz announces at a press conference at the President's office that Operation Kurangi is designed primarily to safeguard the rights of migrant workers rather than to penalize them.
Addressing journalists, President Muiz detailed the administrative strategy intended to manage undocumented immigration while protecting vulnerable populations. President Muiz asserted that the effort to resolve the issue of undocumented migrant workers represents an administrative undertaking unprecedented in the nation's history. To illustrate the progress of the initiative, he noted a dramatic increase in state intelligence concerning the expatriate population. According to the president, when the administration took office, the government possessed data on merely 13% of the migrant workforce. That figure has surged to 98% within a span of 2.5 years. Operation Kurangi is under no circumstances intended as a punitive measure against migrant workers, President Muiz stated, dismissing notions of a systemic crackdown. Maintaining precise demographic data is a vital prerequisite for ensuring protection, he argued. The administration is processing data to offer an expedited pathway for workers wishing to regularize their status, while deportation proceedings remain underway for those who must legally be removed. Identifying the crisis as one of the nation's most severe challenges, President Muiz underscored a rigorous pursuit of a comprehensive solution.
President Dr. Mohamed Muiz announces the government has successfully repaid $50 million of the $150 million loan originally obtained from India by the previous administration.
The repayment represents a significant milestone in the nation's ongoing efforts to eliminate inherited debts and strengthen the country's financial position. Briefing local journalists during the weekly press conference, President Muiz revealed that the previous government secured the $150 million loan from India through 3 separate transactions in 2019. When the current administration assumed office, it inherited these financial obligations, which have since been subject to strategic repayment initiatives. To date, the government has paid $100 million toward this particular debt, demonstrating its commitment to fiscal responsibility and debt reduction, the president added. President Muiz provided a detailed breakdown of the repayment timeline, explaining that the $50 million installment paid on the 11th of March joined an earlier $50 million payment that had been settled in January 2024. With $100 million now fully discharged, the remaining $50 million is scheduled for settlement on the 17th of September this year, and President Muiz assured the public that the necessary arrangements are in place to honor this final commitment. The president used the occasion to emphasize the broader context of the government's debt repayment strategy, revealing that the Maldives has repaid a staggering $974 million in various obligations, including sukuk instruments, currency swaps, and loans over the past 40 days alone. This substantial achievement underscores the administration's determination to relieve the nation of burdensome financial liabilities that have accumulated over previous administrations. The president expressed regret that certain individuals who have previously held high-ranking positions in government have been making unfounded statements designed to create public unrest and damage the country's international reputation. He called upon these figures to cease such counterproductive behavior and refrain from undermining the nation's economic recovery efforts at a critical juncture in its financial history.
President Dr. Mohamed Muiz announces that the construction of synthetic running tracks in all islands designated as cities across the Maldives will commence within this year. The president's commitment came during a press conference held at the president's office, where he addressed questions from journalists regarding athletics infrastructure development plans for the nation's urban centers. Reaffirming the government's dedication to sports infrastructure, President Muiz stated clearly that synthetic tracks will be built in all cities without exception. While he refrained from specifying an exact start date for the projects, the president provided assurance that work on all identified tracks would commence before the conclusion of the current year. The initiative forms part of a broader framework of sports development funded through an Indian line of credit arrangement. Under this financing mechanism, synthetic tracks have been designated for construction in Koludufushi City, Addu City, Fumala City, and Tinadu City. The government's partnership with India on sports infrastructure has already yielded tangible results, most notably with the synthetic track constructed around the cricket ground at the Mafana Stadium. The government has emphasized that the completion of these synthetic tracks will create significant opportunities for Maldivian athletes seeking to develop their skills in track and field disciplines. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Irtisham Adam, stresses on the need for ocean governance frameworks that reflect the diverse realities and differentiated capacities of nations around the Indian Ocean. Delivering a keynote address at the opening ceremony of the 30th session of the Indian Ocean Tuna Commission, or IOTC, Minister Irtisham reaffirmed the Maldives' unwavering commitment to advancing a sustainable fisheries management across the Indian Ocean region. In her remarks, Minister Irtisham highlighted the pivotal role that the Maldives has played in advancing sustainable fisheries management within the Indian Ocean region. She emphasized that the health of the Indian Ocean is intrinsically linked to the livelihoods and food security of millions of people who depend on its resources, and therefore requires coordinated collective action to address the mounting challenges facing marine ecosystems. The minister called upon member states to work in solidarity toward common objectives that serve both environmentally sustainable and economic prosperity. The minister's address placed particular emphasis on the need for ocean governance frameworks that reflect the diverse realities and differentiated capacities of nations around the Indian Ocean. She stressed that effective management approaches must be responsive to the specific circumstances and vulnerabilities of individual states, especially small island developing states whose economies are disproportionately dependent on marine resources. In this context, Minister Irtisham underscored three critical enablers that she said are essential to ensuring meaningful participation of SIDS in global fisheries management: the transfer of appropriate technology, adequate and accessible financing mechanisms, and robust capacity building initiatives that empower local institutions and expertise. The minister affirmed the Maldives' steadfast commitment to strengthening international cooperation and partnership partnerships that advance the sustainable management of tuna fisheries and broader ocean governance objectives. The 30th session of the IOTC represents the culmination of 15 years of active engagement by the Maldives in the organization since joining in 2011. The Maldives welcomes distinguished international delegates as the island nation prepares to host one of Asia's most significant gatherings of broadcasting professionals.
The President of the General Conference of the Asia Pacific Institute for Broadcasting Development AIBD has arrived in the Maldives to participate in the Asia Media Summit. Arriving in the Maldives to attend the summit, AIBD General Conference President and Director General of Thailand's Government Public Relations Department, Sutratai Lertkasam, was welcomed at Welana International Airport by PSM Managing Director Ahmad Shakib and AIBD's Chief Executive Officer. Subsequently, Chief Executive Officer of India's Public Service Broadcaster Prasar Bharati and Secretary General of the Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multisectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation (BIMSTEC) arrived at Welana International Airport VIA to participate in the upcoming Asia Media Summit. The delegates were received by Public Service Media PSM's Managing Director Ahmad Shakib and AIBD Chief Executive Officer. This year's Asia Media Summit, running from 11th to 14th May at the Villa Nautica Resort, carries the thematic banner Maldives 2.0 from tradition to tech, reflecting the region's ongoing transformation in broadcasting technology and content delivery. The summit has drawn more than 200 delegates from across the Asia-Pacific region, representing the highest level of broadcasting management and leadership. These officials will convene to address critical challenges facing the industry, discuss responsible and generational broadcasting practices, and establish new development goals that will shape the future of media across the region. The official opening ceremony is scheduled for 12th May, with plenary sessions continuing through the 13th of May. Pre-summit workshops have already commenced at several venues, including the Manhattan Business Hotel, Horule Island Hotel, and Villa Nautica, providing participants with specialized training and collaborative opportunities ahead of the main proceedings. The summit will conclude on 14th May with a distinctive coral planting event at Kodagiri Picnic Island. Organized by PSM in association with the AIBD, the Asia Media Summit represents one of the largest regional meetings of broadcasters from Asian countries. The gathering serves as a vital platform for strengthening bilateral relations in the broadcasting sector, while enabling delegates to share best practices, explore technological innovation, and develop coordinated approaches to serving their respective audiences in an increasingly digital media environment.
The government submits a legislative proposal to Parliament to establish a systematic legal framework for the collection, processing, and utilization of personal data, a move intended to formalize digital privacy standards.
The Data Protection Bill was presented to the legislative body on behalf of the government by Ali Ibrahim, the Member of Parliament for West Hemweru. Should the legislation be enacted, it would create a stringent regulatory framework detailing the fundamental rights of individuals regarding their personal information, alongside the rigorous responsibilities and guidelines imposed upon entities that handle such data. Addressing the complexities of the modern digital landscape, the bill defines protocols for transferring personal information across borders, including to foreign nations and international organizations. The bill outlines the specific rights granted to data subjects and the mechanisms through which they can be exercised, while establishing mandatory procedural responses for entities in the event of a security breach. To ensure enforcement, the bill designates a privacy commissioner. Under the draft provisions, the sitting Information Commissioner, initially appointed under the Right to Information Act, will assume the role and duties of the Privacy Commissioner. The text further delineates the distinct record-keeping mandates required of both data controllers and processors. It identifies specific operational circumstances under which these entities will be legally obliged to appoint designated data protection officers to ensure ongoing institutional compliance with the law.
The government submits a specialized cybersecurity bill to the parliament to establish a national cybersecurity agency and secure the country's digital environment, according to the legislative proposal.
Hussein Nasir, the Member of Parliament for Central Henveru, formally introduced the measure on behalf of the administration. The legislation seeks to guarantee the security of the Maldives' cyberspace by defining precise requirements for information systems linked to critical infrastructure in both state and private institutions, according to the proposed bill. The proposal aims to identify domestic and cross-border threats, prevent incidents, and establish a resilient system capable of responding to vulnerabilities. To govern these efforts, the bill mandates the creation of the National Cyber Security Agency. Under the bill, the National Security Council will determine cybersecurity policies based on strategic advice from the agency, which will be led by a 5-member executive board. While the agency will operate as an independent institution with definitive legal authority, it will remain under the oversight of the Ministry of Homeland Security, Labor and Technology. The framework introduces strict regulations for the private sector, requiring providers of specific cybersecurity services to obtain operational licenses. Those operating without a license face administrative fines ranging from $3,243.77 to $32,437.72. The law applies to critical information infrastructures and their data across state and private sectors, though the system and personnel of the nation's defense and security services are explicitly exempt.
Parliament approves the importation of a vital medication required for children diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, marking a significant regulatory shift in the nation's healthcare policy.
The legislative action was initiated after the government submitted a motion seeking parliamentary approval to amend Schedule 1 of the nation's Drug Act, a mandate thoroughly reviewed by the Committee on National Security Services. Prior to this milestone, methylphenidate was strictly classified as a prohibited substance, a central nervous system stimulant used to treat ADHD and narcolepsy. The drug status was reconsidered by the executive branch following guidance from the National Drug Control Council. The cabinet determined it was necessary to seek parliamentary consent to amend the law, officially removing methylphenidate from the prohibited narcotics list. Following a review of the submission by the government, members of the Committee on National Security Services voted unanimously in favor of authorizing the medication. Attending members of Parliament subsequently passed the measure without dissent, legally sanctioning its importation into the country. Methylphenidate is recognized as a primary first-line clinical treatment for ADHD, one of the most prevalent development conditions in early childhood. Medical research demonstrates that integrating this medication with therapeutic interventions can substantially alleviate underlying symptoms. Relevant regulatory authorities affirm the medication serves as an essential and highly important treatment for children managing the condition, reinforcing the clinical imperative of the legislative change.
The Maldives has reinforced its position as a global leader in sustainable fisheries management, with Minister of Fisheries, Agriculture and Ocean Resources Ahmad Shiam championing the nation's commitment to balancing the economic needs of fishing communities with the protection of marine ecosystems.
In his address during the 30th session of the Indian Ocean Tuna Commission IOTC held in Malé, Minister Shiam highlighted the remarkable dedication of Maldivian fishermen who continue to venture into the seas daily despite challenging weather conditions, describing their determination as a powerful reminder of why the Commission's work matters so deeply to coastal communities throughout the Indian Ocean region. Under the visionary leadership of President Dr. Mohammad Muiz, the government has instituted a comprehensive agenda aimed at strengthening the fisheries sector, modernizing industry practices, providing substantive assistance to fishing families, and serving as a responsible steward of marine biodiversity. The decision to host this significant commission meeting in Malé underscores the administration's unwavering commitment to these objectives, with Minister Shiam expressing sincere gratitude to President Muiz for his instrumental role in making the gathering possible. Minister Shiam explained Maldives' philosophy regarding environmental sustainability, emphasizing that for this island nation, sustainable fisheries represent far more than abstract political rhetoric or vague aspirational goals. The minister noted that long before sustainability became a central theme in international environmental discourse, Maldivian societies understood the intricate connection between healthy marine ecosystems and the well-being of future generations. This traditional wisdom continues to inform contemporary fisheries policy, with the nation's time-honored fishing practices serving as a model for how fishing can be conducted in harmony with marine environments while minimizing harmful impacts on underwater ecosystems. The minister emphasized that the decision emerging from the current meeting carry profound implications extending far beyond immediate regulatory considerations, touching upon the livelihood of coastal communities, global food security, public health, and quality of life, and the preservation of what remains one of humanity's most valuable natural resources.
Insights into business. A French farmer tells Reuters he is being hammered by rising fertilizer prices due to the Iran war and is considering changing the crops he produces to soften the blow.
It's a pattern that is foreseen to be repeated around the world. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, expects less wheat to be planted in 2026 as farmers shift to less fertilizer-intensive crops. Guillaume Lefort, 42, has been a farmer for the past 16 years and said he needs to sell more crops to be able to afford fertilizer. This year's soaring fertilizer prices have made Lefort consider planting some of his usual crops in Arville in central France, such as swapping maize for sunflowers. He also grows rapeseed, sugar beets, and barley. The Middle East is a leading fertilizer production hub, and much of the global fertilizer trade typically passes through the Strait of Hormuz, which has seen traffic largely brought to a standstill by the conflict. Supplies of urea, a nitrogen-based fertilizer from the world's largest production facility in Qatar, have been halted, and flows of sulfur and ammonia, common inputs for a range of fertilizers, have also been curbed, with the resolution of the conflict proving elusive. Analysts, traders, fertilizer producers, and agronomists are looking back at the last supply crisis, Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine, worried that this time things could get even worse.
Taking a look at international affairs, Prime Minister Keir Starmer tries to quell a mounting rebellion in his party by vowing to prove the doubters wrong and stay in power to avoid plunging Britain into a new political crisis.
A growing number of Labour lawmakers have turned on Starmer after his party suffered the worst local election results for a governing party in more than 3 decades last week, prompting a former junior minister to threaten to seek a leadership contest if he fails to offer radical change.
I know that people are frustrated by the state of Britain, frustrated by politics, and some people frustrated with me. I know I have my doubters, and I know I need to prove them wrong, and I will.
In his speech, Starmer announced that Britain would bring forward legislation to get powers to fully nationalize British Steel, saying a commercial sale had not been possible after the government stepped in to stop its furnaces closing last year. Starmer also said he was looking for an immediate big leap towards closer ties with the European Union and described that as a platform to build upon in the future. However, he did not respond directly when asked whether he would rule out promising membership of the EU single market or customs union going into the next election, due in 2029.
Moving on to sports, Red Bull athlete Arda Sachi completes a 600-kilometer run from Death Valley to Santa Monica Pier.
The grueling ultramarathon took Sachi 5 days to complete and saw the German battle extreme conditions as he traversed across unforgiving Californian terrain. The 28-year-old began on May 5, 2026 at Badwater Basin, the lowest point in the United States, and reached the Pacific Ocean over 123 hours and 21 minutes later on May 10th. The run is part of South Chi's Cyborg Season series of extreme ultra-endurance projects and follows his 3,000-kilometer run from Berlin to New York in 2024, as well as his crossing of Japan, during which he ran 72 marathons in 43 days in 2025.
Concluding with news and entertainment, Girona transformed into a riot of colors as the 71st edition of the Temps de Fleurs festival opens.
Floral exhibits will be on display around the city from May 9th until May 17th, culminating with a nighttime exhibition taking place on the last day. Girona's cathedral steps, recognizable worldwide from Game of Thrones, were transformed into a large-scale floral installation featuring a tribute to architect Anthony Gaudi on the centenary of his death. As part of the volunteer-run festival, around 400,000 people visit Girona to see the floral displays each year, according to the city's deputy mayor, Gemma Jace Carreras.
And that's all the news we have for today. We'll be back with any further updates. Until then, I'm Abdullah Ahil from PSM News.